Let's talk about Donald Trump and rape because it's Monday and seems like a good topic. We've been telling you about the Jane Doe who filed 3 federal complaints about Donald Trump, against Donald Trump, for alleged child rape in connection with a party that she attended involving not only Donald Trump, but also Jeffrey Epstein. And this allegedly happened back in 1994. The alleged victim was 13 years old at the time. And we have not learned that much about the victim until now. We now know that the accuser is Katie Johnson. The most recent federal filing includes 3 affidavits, one from Katie Johnson herself, previously known to us as Jane Doe, plus 2 more, an eyewitness named Tiffany Doe and also a Joan Doe, a classmate of Johnson's back from 1994. Now, Johnson's story has been the same this entire time throughout all of these court proceedings. She recalled being approached by Tiffany, who allegedly worked for Jeffrey Epstein at the time. Tiffany invited Katie Johnson, who was then an aspiring model, to an event in Epstein's home to get to know people and maybe get a modeling job. And throughout the summer of 1994, the lawsuit alleges that Johnson endured, quote, savage sexual attacks by both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein.
Katie Johnson is the only Epstein victim who officially filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump. She alleges that Donald Trump sexually assaulted her and raped her on 4 different occasions. These rapes occurred in 1994 when she was 13 years old. Katie's original lawsuit, filed in California, was thrown out by the judge. She had filed a civil rights suit but failed to actually state an applicable civil rights claim.
Katie filed a second lawsuit in New York with 2 highly credible lawyers guiding her, Thomas Mager and Lisa Bloom.
Katie withdrew her second claim after a hacker hacked into Lisa Bloom's server and Katie's personal details were found out. Up until that point, Katie was simply known as Jane Doe. After that, the death threats came pouring in, including a bomb threat. And the day that Katie was scheduled to live stream her press conference to the world, she panicked and walked away for good.
Jane Doe has received numerous threats today, as have all the Trump accusers that I have represented. She is living in fear. She has decided that she is too afraid to show her face. She's been here all day, ready to do it, but unfortunately, she's in terrible fear.
Katie gives a vivid and horrifying description in her sworn affidavit of the 4 encounters she had with Donald Trump. None of Katie's allegations have ever been debunked, nor has she ever retracted any of her statements. The only reason that she didn't follow through with her lawsuit was because of the barrage of death threats that she faced by Trump supporters. In 2016, Katie gave an interview to the British tabloid, the Daily Mail. She gave graphic details of her encounters that are all confirmed in her affidavit. The Daily Mail also confirmed her story with a witness to all the encounters, Tiffany Doe, an Epstein recruiter and coach who witnessed all of the encounters. We learned from Katie and Tiffany's testimony that Jeffrey Epstein provided coaches for his clients with girls like Katie who were virgins and didn't know how to pleasure a man. The coach would sit in on the session and guide the victim according to the client's instructions. For normal-minded people, it is impossible to process this kind of depravity. But both the victim and her witness have sworn in an affidavit to the validity of these encounters, under the threat of perjury for making a false statement.
During our first encounter, Mr. Trump didn't really talk to me at all. He spoke at me, but he was talking to Tiffany more, telling her what he wanted me to do. I thought he felt like he was too good to even speak to me. Tiffany told me what I needed to do. Anything he did say to me wasn't that great. Like, you need some work. I was 13. I didn't know what I was doing. Mr. Trump said very little to me during that first encounter other than I reminded him of his daughter. After I finished the sex act, he made a comment that I wasn't great, before putting on his pants. During our second encounter, I felt very intimidated. Mr. Trump made a comment that I wasn't doing it right, that I needed to take classes. He continued to let me do it. He didn't tell me to stop. He said something to Tiffany a couple of times, like tell her to go faster. For the third encounter, Mr. Trump had another girl and I dress as maids and pretend to clean the room. The other girl, Maria, was 12 years old. I felt she was going through the same thing as me, in that she was being forced to be there somehow. So we cleaned and then very clumsily kissed, and Mr. Trump caught us making out on the job as part of the role play. Mr. Trump then ordered us to carry out a string of sex acts on each other and on him. After he finished, he said we both could have done it better and then left. We never saw him again that night. Tiffany phoned me and told me my next encounter would be another role play. When I arrived, she told me what it was. I'm like freaking out. So you want to tie me to a bed and play out a rape scene with a man? She told me that's what Mr. Trump wanted. I made sure that Tiffany stayed in the room. Mr. Trump had agreed reluctantly to allow her. He was pretty rough with me. I was already tied to the bed. He pushed me around and tore off my clothes and then attempted to rape me. I started crying and I asked him to stop, and I asked Tiffany to come over, but he kept on going. Tiffany tried to intervene, but she was pushed away. Mr. Trump said, "What did you think this was gonna be?" He was very abrasive and I just started crying and I screamed and said, "Please don't." And he slapped me and told me to shut up, and then he ripped my panties off. After he finished, he got up and started putting on his clothes. He was disgusted by the fact I was crying. Mr. Trump didn't use a condom and I was worried about getting pregnant. He basically said that I should be proud that he would even allow me the opportunity, and if I got pregnant I could get an abortion. With that, he threw $400 onto the floor. Tiffany made clear she wasn't happy with him. And then Jeffrey Epstein came in and he saw that there was money on the floor and got mad. He asked if I had asked for the money and said that he was going to be the one to pay me, and said it wasn't mine to take.